In 1976, John Lennon and Paul McCartney were watching Saturday Night Live at Lennon's Dakota apartment when host Lorne Michaels offered the Beatles $3,000 to reunite. Lennon turned to McCartney and suggested they go downtown to the studio. They considered it, but ultimately decided against it. They were too tired. This wasn't the only time a Beatles reunion nearly happened. The story involves legal battles, attempted reconciliations, and McCartney's role in why the group never reformed. The breakup began on September 20th, 1969, when Lennon told the other members he wanted out. The decision remained private while the band had one album, Let It Be, awaiting release. When McCartney announced in April 1970 that he was leaving, it shocked the public and angered his bandmates. Lennon later told Rolling Stone they were hurt McCartney didn't inform them first. McCartney maintained he was simply confirming what the band already knew, telling the BBC that Lennon had initiated the split. The first reunion opportunity came in 1971, with Harrison's concert for Bangladesh at Madison Square Garden. Starr agreed to perform. Lennon was willing if Yoko Ono could participate, but Harrison refused. McCartney declined because of the ongoing legal dispute over manager Alan Klein. McCartney opposed Klein, while the other three supported him. McCartney explained he didn't want the press declaring a Beatles reunion, which would benefit Klein. Even with only Starr and Harrison performing, media attention focused on the partial reunion. The early 70s saw open hostility between Lennon and McCartney. McCartney's 1971 album Ram included veiled criticism of Lennon in Too Many People. Lennon responded with How Do You Sleep?, featuring Harrison on guitar, dismissing McCartney's solo work and attacking him personally. Lennon later admitted the song reflected his own pain. McCartney wrote in his 2021 book, The Lyrics, that he was deeply hurt. McCartney filed suit in December 1970 to dissolve the Beatles' business partnership. A high court ruling in March 1971 favored his petition. By 1973, all four Beatles contributed to Starr's solo album, though never on the same track. Harrison suggested to Lennon they form a group with Starr and bassist Klaus Voormann, excluding McCartney. Harrison told interviewers in 1974 that while he'd join a band with Lennon, he couldn't work with McCartney from a musical standpoint. Later in 1973, McCartney attempted to organize a reunion to address their legal issues. By February 1974, rumors circulated about an imminent reformation. All four members were in Los Angeles the following month, but chose not to meet. McCartney faced visa complications due to a marijuana charge. In April 1973, he told journalists that politics and drug charges were preventing the Beatles from reuniting. Lennon faced deportation proceedings at the same time. In May 1974, McCartney and Lennon recorded together for the first time since the split. Linda McCartney suggested they visit a session where Lennon was working. The session included Stevie Wonder, Harry Nilsson, and Bobby Keys. McCartney later told Rolling Stone the session was completely disorganized. The recordings became known as the bootleg, A Toot and a Snore in '74. By 1975, business disputes were settled, and Lennon wanted to write with McCartney again. McCartney invited Lennon to a recording session in New Orleans. However, Lennon reconciled with Ono after an 18-month separation. May Pang, Lennon's girlfriend during that period, said Lennon changed his attitude toward McCartney after reuniting with Ono. The Saturday Night Live offer in 1976 was meant as satire. Concert promoter Bill Sargent had offered them $10 million in 1973 and $50 million in January 1976. But Michaels' $3,000 offer nearly worked. Lennon showed McCartney the clip the following week and suggested they appear together for half the money. They considered it, but were too tired to go downtown. Lennon reflected on reunion possibilities in a 1980 Playboy interview shortly before his death. He explained that while Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Starkey could perform together, it wouldn't truly be the Beatles because they were no longer in their 20s. In 1974, Lennon, McCartney, and David Bowie discussed forming a supergroup, but nothing came of it. On May 19, 1979, McCartney, Harrison, and Starr performed at Eric Clapton's wedding reception, the first time three Beatles performed live together since 1969. Various promoters and UN Secretary General Kurt Waldheim attempted to organize reunions for charitable causes throughout the late 70s. In 1979, McCartney signed a recording contract with Columbia that included a clause allowing him to record with the other Beatles for another label. McCartney has said there were reunion discussions, but they never developed sufficient momentum. He's explained they worried a reunion could damage their legacy if it didn't meet expectations. He told Rolling Stone the suggestions were never convincing enough, and the Beatles operated as a democracy where one dissenting vote was sufficient to stop anything. McCartney has described the breakup as difficult, saying he didn't know what to do after being a Beatle for so long. Lennon, in 1975, said enough time had passed for him to be open to a reunion, though he thought Harrison might not be interested. By 1980, Lennon confirmed he and McCartney were close again. Starr has said he'd like to think they would have reunited if Lennon hadn't been killed in December 1980, though he acknowledges it's uncertain. McCartney, often blamed for the breakup, was among the most consistent advocates for a reunion. He organized the 1973 attempt, included a reunion clause in his 1979 contract, and was willing to appear on Saturday Night Live in 1976. However, he understood the risks to their legacy. Harrison appeared most resistant to reuniting, particularly with McCartney. His 1974 comments about not being able to work with McCartney musically created a significant barrier. During the Beatles' years, Harrison had been overshadowed by the Lennon-McCartney partnership, with his songs limited to 1 or 2 per album. His solo success with All Things Must Pass demonstrated he'd been constrained within the group. Lennon's position fluctuated. At times, he attacked McCartney publicly, while at other times, he sought reconciliation. His relationship with Ono appeared to influence these shifts. Starr remained the most diplomatic, willing to work with all his former bandmates, but his goodwill couldn't overcome the tensions between the others. When Lennon was murdered on December 8, 1980, any possibility of a full reunion ended. Harrison recorded All Those Years Ago as a tribute to Lennon, with Starr on drums and McCartney and Linda McCartney on backing vocals. In the 90s, the 3 surviving Beatles reunited for the anthology project, completing Free as a Bird and Real Love using Lennon's unfinished demos. They also attempted Grow Old With Me and Now and Then, with Now and Then finally released in 2023, using technology to isolate Lennon's vocals. McCartney's concerns about protecting their legacy proved prescient. The Beatles' catalog ends with Abbey Road and Let It Be, with no disappointing comeback or reunion tour. The music remains as it was, documenting 4 young musicians at the height of their creative powers.